Hey everyone. Before this episode starts, I just want to give a trigger warning here. I do talk about my experience with suicide, and I talk about suicide ideation. So if you're not in the space to receive that, please make sure that you take the time to one, maybe find some time to still listen to me. It's like, no, I'm kidding. Take the time that you need to process this episode as you see fit. And of course, if there's any way that I can be of support, my DMs are open. All right, so boom. Welcome back to another episode of the Inside Perspective. I'm your host, Lee, and today we're going to talk about therapy. We're going to talk about the benefits of therapy. We're going to talk about my journey with therapy and why I feel as though therapy is so important, even if you don't have big T traumas. So, as a quick little check-in, I decided to combine two of my locks. If you've ever seen any of my like other videos, I always had this one super baby one, and it started hurting. Like, and I put my hair up sometimes since your girl's long enough to put in a little ponytail, a little bun. But by the time like I'd even get to work, like it wouldn't even be a full day, that part of my scalp would like start burning, or like I'd brush past it and it would hurt. Or y'all ever be scratching your head and then out of nowhere you hit a certain like painful ass spot, like something like that. Like it was just happening far too much for my liking. So my friend was here, and as I was talking to her about it, and she was like, no, I think that's a good idea, because it's clear that because it was a smaller lock, as it was locking down at the bottom, it was starting to become heavy. And then I had noticed like none of the hair in between was really locking up, and it was getting like my curls weren't as curling. You know what I mean? So I already had started either thinking I was gonna comb it out, and like divvy it up between the locks around, but let's make life easier. I just decided to combine it. So that's why I literally only have like one one two strand twist in right now, because my baby is recovering. It's basically like you go to the hospital after you break a limb or sprain something. They give you some stability. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I feel like that's what I've been doing with life in general. Like I've just been giving myself the things that I need to lean on in order to still be successful. So with that being said, let's just jump right into it. I first started seeing a therapist when I was 16, I'm pretty sure. I started seeing a therapist consistently when I was 16. And so there were a few therapists that I had tried for about 2 years prior to me finding my beloved therapist. Remember the first person I had talked to was someone that was like the pediatrician had recommended. So I had, went and talked to whoever, and they asked you like, are you feeling sad? Are you feeling this? I'm like, yes, I am. Now what? For so long I was scared to even speak up about that, but that's why they ask you that at your well care visits, your PCP, your primary care physician, whenever you go get a wellness checkup, and they ask you like, have you been feeling sad, have you been feeling this? It's more than likely because they have resources. It doesn't mean those resources are going to be good, but it also can be the first step in making sure that you're putting your health, your mental health as a priority, and you're asking for the help that you need. And so I think around 14, maybe even younger, I'd have to check with my mom. But I remember after I had my well child visit, I had went into another room and started talking to someone, and they were like, you can have mom leave the room so you can feel more comfortable to share, yada, 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 yada. And so after, this is probably the one thing that I don't like about therapy, is the fact that you kind of have to speak up about not everything, but you have to speak up about a good amount of things and talk to someone and open up to someone to see if they're even actually capable of helping you. And because the things that we're experiencing are so like gut wrenching, like they're big T traumas, little T traumas, like it's not something that you want to keep, saying over and over again. And so a tip to that is Write down the top 3 things that you want to deal with, that you want to talk about with a therapist, so that now you're not going in and they know Sally, Megan, Mike, and Jay, all who were a part of, your judge that fucked you over and treated you like shit. Like, there's a little bit of embarrassment that came to it for me, at least. And so if you want to make it easier, I'm not saying going in there scripted, but also going there with the understanding of, this is a therapist that, yes, can help you, but they may not actually have the tools or the resources to support you in its fullest capacity. And that's what you have to learn how to recognize. So have your top 3 things that you're, dealing with that's bothering you, and then literally ask, like, is this something that you're capable of, treating? Do you have a background in trauma? Do you have a background in trauma therapy? What other resources are there? Yada, yada, yada. Because typically your first session with a therapist is going to be a bunch of questions. They're just going to ask you a bunch of questions. And so that's how the rest of this session with this woman that I was meeting. She asked me, my name, my age, date of birth, how many people do I live with, what is my relationship with my friend's life, why am I coming here seeking therapy. I can't even remember all of them, but it's really just typically like an onboarding session. Like, they're just, yeah, and you gotta lay it flat out. Like, you can't go in there and fake it and think that you're gonna get the solutions that you need. You can't. It's not gonna work. It's gonna catch up to you. But nevertheless, we get to the end of the session, and I'm actually getting out, like, what I'm feeling and what I was going through and why I was struggling. And what I didn't care for is that the first thing that this individual offered me was medication. And so while I knew that medication was a great option, this isn't a dig at medication at all, because you should also see medication for your brain as medication for your ligaments, for your cramps, for your headache. Like, your brain is also a part of your body. It's just so fucking intelligent that it can really dictate you. Like, it's a really strong muscle, and if not used correctly, it will work against you. And so, yes, medication could have been helpful for me, but that's not something that I wanted to start with, because I knew what I wanted my journey to look like. So that was the last time I seen that individual. And so, more conversations with my mom. She's still seeing me not getting better. About a year or so later, I think I'm around 15, turning 16, was close to that. But I ended up meeting with a family friends therapist because they had came recommended, talk to them, figure it out. And for me, it was really difficult for me to find connection to this. She was a sweet woman, sweet lady. But with what I was going through, I needed someone that looked like me. So this white woman who was amazing at her job just couldn't find the connection to actually support me through what I was going through. And felt like I was spending too much of my time explaining to her cultural norms that, are a part of my life, in order to get her to understand why I felt the way I felt. But like, no, I'm not paying to teach you. Like, it just started to feel very uncomfortable for me. And so after that, I really was off therapy. I was like, you know what, fuck it. Like, I'll figure it out in myself, or I'll just, Nevertheless, finally, my third try actually seeing a therapist. My mom sent me her website. She told me just give it a chance. At the time, it was someone that was really aligned with, being a Christian and being of like this Christian faith. And with me having the limited scope of how Christian people treat gay people, as I was still somewhat coming out of my shell with that, I was like, how the fuck am I supposed to do that? Like, how am I supposed, like, what I'm dealing with, like, I can't. And my mom's just like, just give it a try. Just give it a try. And so, long story short, uber glad that I gave this woman a chance, because I was at my wit's end. I was like, I'm not about to go to another appointment, spill out my guts, and still not get help, and like literally still not get help. But what made the biggest difference for me is that this woman called my mom, spoke to her on the phone, and said, I need Aaliyah to be okay with this before I schedule her for an appointment with me. I'm not comfortable with seeing her if she doesn't know that she's coming to see me. And then she encouraged my mom to ask me a few questions. The first one, how would you rate your level of happiness or your level of sadness? It was one of the two. But then the last question was, are you thinking about killing yourself? And when she asked me at the time, I was like, she had asked, "Are you thinking about killing yourself, or do you have a plan to kill yourself?" And I didn't have a plan, but the thoughts, the suicide ideation was so strong, like so strong. But whenever she decided to have my mom ask me that question, it made me feel like, well, this woman doesn't seem as if she's incompetent. So let's try to give it a try. I had learned so much about accountability with this woman. I learned so much about what was my responsibility and what wasn't, and what role am I playing with the people in my life, and what am I carrying that's not mine. Um, I learned self confidence, I learned self assurance. I learned how to properly set boundaries and not just tell someone something like, well, if you're gonna be like this, then I'm a just, yeah, like if this is how this is gonna be, or if this is how this is gonna go, then XYZ. And it's like, that's not setting a boundary, that's giving an ultimatum. Those are two very different things. And so she taught me that setting a boundary is, with you continuing to do this, I will be removing myself. There is no conversation, because we probably already spoke about what it was before, and you're still doing it now. And so at that case, you don't even respect me, the fact that I came and talked to you about something and you're still doing what you're doing. So with that in mind, there's nothing to talk about. Cut and dry. That's black and white. But she also taught me that even my thinking pattern was black and white, all or nothing. She helped me develop gray room. She helped me to live in the gray space, because I was either all of one thing to appease someone else, or all of nothing to appease someone else. And so for me, therapy teaches you so much about, like, y'all see those posts where it's like, you're playing a part in your own demise, or you're playing a part in shit not working. Therapy not only shows you that, but then a good therapist gives you the tools to no longer act that way. Therapy doesn't tell you how to think. It doesn't tell you, how to believe, but it does challenge you to figure out what you believe. What do you feel about the situation? I learned from therapy that I was too busy always running to like 50 different people after a situation that happened, that I never even gave myself the chance to actually understand what had happened to me. I was too quick to be like, yeah, that bitch, da 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 da, and this nigga, da da da, that I never sat with the fact that I was just disrespected. I was looking to see how many other people's reactions would be, and then picking one to play. I wasn't even being authentic, because that people pleasing was deep, deep. Like it taught me that I was playing too much of a role in my parents' marriage. Quite frankly, it was none of my business, but because of, how things were transpiring in the home, I only wanted peace. And so when something's happening and I know I can create that peace, I can cultivate that peace, I can be that bridge, I wanted to do that. But that was something that I never should have been in the predicament to do. But me being the sweet soul that I am, I'm like, no, I'm a help, because I can help and I know how to help. But baby, you're 6. You're 8, you're 14. Like, that's not your responsibility. And so my biggest challenge that my therapist and I worked on, and I want to go and find my notes too, now that I think about it. But something big that my therapist and I worked on was me no longer taking on the emotional burden of others. I am so empathetic that even when someone would disrespect me and I would approach them about it, I would feel bad. I would feel for them. That's not how that's supposed to work. It's not how that's supposed to work. And so she taught me the practice of what it's like to actually live a fulfilling life. You don't just like hit a point and then everything switches. Like, it's constant intention, attention to what you're doing and how you're doing it, without allowing yourself to get so caught up in the process of healing that now you're just ignoring your traumas, ignoring your triggers. Because I'm gonna meditate, or I'm gonna, I'm gonna go smoke, or I'm gonna go do this. That's not gonna help you. You can't pray it away. You can't meditate it away. Like, you got to sit with your feelings. You got to sit with your emotions. And meditating is definitely a form of that. I do it myself, but I'm not meditating to try to ignore the pain that I'm feeling. I'm meditating to really sit with it, to really understand what I'm experiencing. And so she gave me the tools to think, is this mine? And then, like, we made almost like a map chart. Like, if this is mine, okay, now what do I do with it? Okay, now what? Okay, now what if this no longer has nothing to do with me? Then what do I do? Like, we built out a process map because that was the best way that I learned. And I love maps and I love connections. Like, that's just who I was. And then she built off of that. And so I gave my therapist the opportunity to learn about me and to know what works for me and what helps me. I even remember we were going through a few sessions where I just wasn't sharing quite much, and she knew that I was holding back. And so instead of saying, like, why aren't you sharing what you're sharing with me, she went and got this kinetic saying, and she didn't say nothing. And instead of us sitting in front of, she would usually sit at her desk and I would sit at the chair that's, like, right in front of it. Instead of us sitting there, she took me over to this basically like a 6-foot table, like, and she sat practically next to me, and she gave me the kinetic saying. And so she's like, so tell me, how was your week this week? And before I knew it, I was flabbermouthed at the gums. Like, so this is like a really positive experience with therapy that I've been able to have. Like, that woman was my therapist all the way up until I was in college. Like, I'm pretty sure I still seen her a few times after I graduated because I still needed some touch points. But you get to the point to where once they give you the tools and you're continuously putting them in practice, journaling about them, taking notes about them, like, yeah, I stuck up for myself today, and what did that feel like, and XYZ, like, and then going back, reading them, sitting with them, paying attention. Like, that's what therapy gives you. That's what therapy gives you. Therapy doesn't allow motherfuckers to be confused around you no more. You're not gonna be one way to me one day, and then one day to me another, and then another motherfucker the next day. I need some consistency because the change that you're giving me doesn't work. And so instead of me going to this person like, hey, I really don't like the way you're moving, that's who you're understood to be. Why do I have to sit here and try to paint a different picture about it? If you want to come to me and say that you've been experiencing some things and so your move's been a little off and you've been acting a little different, I'll honor that and accept that. But I'm going to give you space so that you can come to me and say that. I'm not going to be all up in your face talking about what you are and are not doing and what I have expectations of you. We've had that conversation at the beginning of the friendship. If we need to check in, we could do that. But there's only but so much space that could be provided. And this is not just for friendships. It's for mentors. It's for bosses, your supervisor, your manager, your mama, your daddy, your uncle, your cousin, like auntie, everybody, your grandma. You know how many people I've gone no contact with? Shut down. Boundaries is here. I was even no contact with my mom for a little second. I give people space and I give people grace. Therapy taught me how to communicate. Therapy gave me the tools, gave me the words that I needed to verbalize the feelings that I was experiencing inside. A lot of times we say we're mad, but we're hurt. A lot of us say, we're pissed off, but really we feel disrespected. And whenever you really start saying with the true words that you're feeling, like, maybe you're not irritated, maybe you're bewildered, thrown off, weirded out, uncomfortable. Whenever you just start naming shit and just putting it in some big old group category, that's why it's so difficult to process. You got it in too large of a pond. You clumping together, like, literally think about this. Mad is such a general word. Think of it like a fucking ocean. You're not gonna be able to filter through the entire ocean to get through what you need to get through. But if you shrink it down and say that you feel bewildered and disconnected, It'll make you sit with it a little different. But there's a responsibility that comes with therapy. You just can't show up and, have casual conversation and think that you gonna make progress. Therapy is work. Therapy is showing up to them sessions prepared. No matter what. Like, therapy is work. And if you treat it like a joke, that's what you're gonna become. Sometimes not everybody needs a therapist. Sometimes you need a life coach. Sometimes you need a life coach. Sometimes you need accountability partner. Sometimes you just need a group of community people that are going to keep you accountable. Not everybody needs a therapist. But whenever you have a bunch of big T traumas, or you have a bunch of little T traumas built up, like, that's going to take an effect on how you show up. I don't care who you are. Like, yeah, you're the person that keeps getting stepped on and you keep showing your heart. That's a problem. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Therapy will teach you maybe there's a different approach that you can take, that where you're still showing up fully with your heart as open as you can be, but still protecting it at the same time. Therapy will teach you that you've been walking around giving people diamonds of who you are and like a diamond of just like who your being is, and you're giving it to a toddler that looks like a grown man or a grown woman. Therapy will show you how much anger you have pent up. Therapy will show you how much shame you have built up. The benefits, you get to live your life. Like, you get to live your life fully. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to hold back. You learn that there's certain people that don't deserve to be in your life. Therapy breaks you down back into the original version of yourself. Back to who that little kid wanted to be when they first came out the womb and was just experiencing the world and thinking about the impact that they could have. You may show up to therapy, being who you had to become in order to protect yourself, but therapy gonna break you down so that you can see that you could be exactly who you are. And all those individuals that you needed to put your armor on around, you get to now dictate, because now it sets you up with this is what I'm willing to tolerate. And I don't even want to call it tolerate. This is what is the requirement. This is the bar. These are the ingredients to the friendship. If you can't meet that, and know that it's ever growing and ever changing. So communicating openly with people and having conversations is a really important part of it. No matter how difficult those conversations could be. Now, if you ever get in a position of where you're trying to articulate to somebody that just wants to argue or just wants to nitpick, stop communicating with them. Just stop. I'm not trying, be your therapist to give you advice, but this is what my therapist told me. If you bring your feelings to someone and they treat it like it's an argument, leave. Fast. Because those are scary people. Those are people that are so uncomfortable with accountability and sitting with their own feelings that they don't want to hear what you have to say about them. You should just be grateful that they're allowing you to be in their space. Therapy taught me how to spot a narcissist. And that's why I'm real quick to just disengage. I don't have to converse with you. I don't have to have a conversation. Therapy taught me how to identify, still share my final thoughts, and remove. For my peace, for my sake. It's not to get a lick back. Like, I don't go to therapy just so I can be smarter than everybody. Like, I go to therapy because I want to be the best and safest and healthiest version of myself. And trying to communicate with a narcissist literally makes my insides shake. So I don't. But that's my boundary. That's the boundary that I had to come up with to keep myself safe, to keep myself healthy. I don't need no cortisol flush trying to have a conversation with you. The fuck is that? I'm not trying to be stressed out. I want to feel like I can come to you because you're a person that values me. And if I'm coming and sharing something with you, then XYZ. Therapy also told me how I did not like being told about myself for some time. I wanted to because not only was it the people pleaser, it was also the perfectionist. So somebody giving me advice or telling me anything about my situation or what I could be doing differently was a huge trigger. Because it's like, what, you don't think I could do it myself? You think you're better than me? You think you're better than me? Like that's how I would respond to things. But I realized that that was the person, that was the little kid that I had to become in order to get the attention from my parents, the appeasement from my parents, the a good job from the coach, the attention of the coach, good high fives from teammates. Like it was so built up into so many different places. Like therapy helps you break down a lot, and it's only as beneficial as you allow it to be. It's hard. It is hard work. But whenever you give yourself that chance, like we think about how many people were willing to date to find true love, but you won't even give a therapist a second. You won't even give therapy a second try. Therapy's gonna help you. The partner that you're searching for is not their responsibility to fix anything that's going on within you. So you willing to give these niggas chance after chance after chance, but you telling me you can't go try to find a second therapist, a third therapist, a fourth therapist for you? When it comes to the resources that you can think that you can find in terms of therapy, if you are currently employed, I say check to see if there's an EAP program, employee assistance. Yeah, I guess employee assistance program. Nevertheless, check to see what they have. More often than not, if you're in a crisis, they definitely should have at least a therapist that you can contact and connect with. Typically those individuals will only offer you 6 sessions around about, because again, this is whenever you're in a crisis. Now if you're looking for a consistent therapist outside of that, I still say go to HR. If you're working for a company, they need to work for you too. So ask them, what resources do you have for therapy? Is there anyone that you can recommend? Is there any practices that you can recommend? Any places that I can go and look? The other one is that you can go on Psychology Today. A lot of therapists, counselors, psychologists, yeah. The difference between a therapist and a psychologist is that a psychologist is like board certified, like they can prescribe you medication. A therapist, I gotta learn the difference between therapist and counselor. That's not good. But I think they're one and the same, but I don't want to diminish one or uplift the other. But a therapist, I think they have more of some medical type of background. I don't even want to get the line. Nevertheless, there's 3 different options. I think a therapist and a counselor are one and the same. I'll put something in the description once I find some more information, maybe an article or something that really breaks down, the difference between the 3. Where's I going with this? Psychology Today. So you can go on there. You can put a bunch of filters in. If you want them to be black, you want them to be a woman, like you can chop it up exactly like that. But understand that I believe only 3 or 4% of today's therapists, psychologists, 4% are black. So take that with a grain of salt. But also, see all that your resources are. I've heard pros and cons about BetterHelp.com, but if you go on my website, the Inside Perspective, or I think it's InsidePerspective.org. On the resources tab, I have information from about 4 different websites that support individuals that are looking for therapy, counseling, or just crisis, or in a crisis and need and require support. The Boris Henson Foundation is up there. Sad Girls Club. I think the other one was Black Men Talk. There's a few different resources up there, but go ahead, take a peek, check them out. Some counselors now are willing to see patients virtually. So you just pop on that Zoom call or pop on a FaceTime call, and some of them are as personal as that, and you can get what you need from your counselor. But yeah, I think therapy is very fruitful, and I think everyone no matter what you've been through. I think just even living in America is traumatic. So seeing a counselor and just it's about creating your tools. Like you're not supposed to. I'm not gonna. It's about creating your toolbox. It's about meeting with someone that helps you walk through the muck, makes you feel supported, makes you feel seen, heard, and respected, that helps you gain tools to use in life. Yeah, I'm not a therapist, but I even tell my life coaching clients, I'm not trying to be your life coach for life. I'm trying to give you the necessary tools. We work together. You put them in practice. You come back. We see what's working. We see what's not, and we continue building. And then we're going to get to a point to where you don't need me. You can touch in. You can touch base. Like that's literally the basis I'm on with my therapist now, because I've gotten to a point. Like she even told me, she's like, "Girl, I don't know why you keep giving me this money." She was like, "You know what my responses would be. You're saying them. You're speaking them." So now it just got to a point to where if I'm ever going through something that's a little rough, then I touch in with my therapist. Whenever my dog passed away, I touched in with my therapist because that was a very big loss. And it was the first loss that I ever dealt with that was so close. So I still don't even know what grief is. I'm still working that out. But I do know and understand that I'm at a place to where I don't think I'd be as far or even here if it wasn't for therapy. And so I really encourage you to sit down and think, do I need a therapist? Do I need a life coach? Like, if you're already thinking, do I need a therapist? You probably do. It's like looking at something, abnormal on your skin saying, should I get this checked out? Yes, you should. There's nothing wrong in going and receiving the help that you need and getting the help that you need. Ultimately, it helps you become a better person, it spreads goodness throughout the world, and creates more positivity and more change that this earth definitely needs to see. So take care of yourself, put yourself first, and really understand that therapy is not like you need to be in a straitjacket. Now you can never be trusted because you had to go to the cuckoo house. Like the stigma that is put upon this is based on motherfuckers that want to stay the same, and they're mad that you're changed because you're holding them accountable, and now they gotta do something better. So they don't want you to get help because that means your light is going to shine on their darkness. And niggas that want to stay in the dark don't want that to be seen. So take the time and put yourself first, and go see a therapist. Until next time.